Hello, it's Dave Allen, the dating specialist here. In today's video, I'll be talking about the latest episode of the TV series 90 Day Fiancé. Now, 90 Day Fiancé provides me with some specific scenarios I can respond to and teach principles. I'll be speaking to each of the American cast members in this episode whose fiancés are overseas. Now, you may notice that as I'm talking to these cast members, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. There aren't a lot of data points that we have in these episodes, and so I want to be careful about making any quick judgments. And so, any comments that I make, keep that in mind. We don't have a lot of data points. Also, keep in mind the producers of the show are using specific clips to highlight the stories they want to tell. And so what we're seeing on TV isn't necessarily the full story. So once again, that's why I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. So with that preface, let's get started.
Brandon, let's talk about what happened with you and Julia in this latest episode. So the first thing we see Julia having to work on the farm for the first time and feeding the animals. She was supposed to be up at 7 a.m. in the morning feeding the animals. That wasn't exactly her style. She wasn't up until around noon. She didn't really like feeding the animals. She said things like, I don't like to wake up early. I'm dirty. They have to eat every day. Thankfully, your friend Aspen comes in to help her and is able to help her through that process. She continues to say things like, I don't want to stay here and take care of the animals. This is not work. We need to leave. Now, the one comment I'd make on this, before we've talked about how you need to have a lot of empathy for them coming in and being in this new situation, and I would still agree with that here. The one thing I would say, I don't know all the things that went around this because I don't know exactly what expectations were set up with Julia and what the communication was like and everything like that. But if she had the expectation of and had agreed to, I'm going to get up at 7 in the morning and feed the animals, there could be a potential red flag here in the area of personal responsibility. We've talked about how in any relationship, you want to make sure the person you're dating, in order to determine if you're safe, you want to determine if they have empathy, self-control, and personal responsibility. In this case, this is a little bit of a personal responsibility red flag. She's not fulfilling her obligations. There are animals that are going hungry, and that's something to look out for. It's not necessarily a deal breaker in and of itself, but just a little red flag to keep in mind. The next thing I want to say, I love your grandfather, your granddad. He's awesome. A couple of things that I loved about him. I love that he stuck up for you. And when your mom was saying, Julia, your neck, and how'd that happen, et cetera, your granddad comes in and says, stop embarrassing your son. Good job, granddad, for stepping in. And I also love that he said, I'm 88 years old. I'd still do that. Just showing, it's not that big of a deal. And yeah, again, sticking up for you. Really appreciate that from your granddad. Also like that he's looking out for you. And in the first interview, we see him saying she's a lovely young woman, but he's worried that she might be using you. And he has the advice to have your eyes and your ears open. And that's great advice in these situations. The last note I'll make is about the wedding date that you guys are going to set, are working on setting, and that's May 9th, which also happens to be the weekend of Mother's Day, which totally freaked out your parents, especially your mother. But kudos to you, Brandon, for sticking up for Julia and for sticking up for the date that the two of you have decided on and that you want. That's really not your parents' decision. And even if that does fall on Mother's Day and your mom's not happy about that, I thought it was great that you put your foot down on that one. You said, I think she has good reason for the date she wants. And again, you stuck up for Julia, you stuck up for yourself, and I think that's great. We haven't seen you do that in that way yet, and I thought that was a powerful moment for you, so well done. Stephanie, in this episode, we get to meet a couple of your cousins, Shannon and Ryan. We also meet your medical assistant and friend, Pam. One of the things that's interesting that comes out of this is that all three of these people who love you very much are concerned about what's going on. Now, you, of course, have to make your own decisions of what you want to do, but when you have close family members and friends who are expressing concerns and are saying, look out for these things, make sure you do that. That can be a really good indicator. That's not necessarily, again, a deal breaker in and of itself, but pay attention to what the people who love you are saying. Now, there's kind of this romantic ideal from Romeo and Juliet, and it's a good thing to go against your family and what your family wants. And again, in some cases, you are going to need to do that. And you are going to need to do what's best for you based on a good relationship. But in most cases, when you've got friends and family members, and especially multiple of them giving you the same message, keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for that. One of the comments that you make in the episode in talking about you and Ryan is you say, I have thousands of dollars into this. What am I supposed to do? And so it almost sounds like one of the reasons you feel stuck and moving forward with this relationship is because of the money that you've poured into it. And letting go of the relationship would be an indicator that you had made a mistake in paying all this money. Now, there may be some good reasons to be in this relationship. I know I can tell that you really care for Ryan. You say, I love him with all my heart. He's the first person I've ever wanted to marry. And so it may be important for you to stay in this relationship. But don't let the I have thousands of dollars into this, what am I supposed to do? Don't let that be the reason that you stay in the relationship. It is definitely, I wasn't clear in this episode whether the money that you're spending is all going to paying Ryan's salary and he doesn't know about it, or if there is some that you are giving him and his family and they are aware. It kind of seemed like there might have been a little bit of both. But there's definitely this motivating factor of Ryan being in this relationship because of the money that's involved. I haven't been able to see you and Ryan interacting very much, and so it's hard for me to really make a lot of comments about this relationship, but there are definitely a number of concerning factors and red flags there. Jovi, one of the first interactions we see between you and Yara in this episode is when you give her a brand new iPhone, which super cool of you. And she says something interesting. She says, now you're the best boyfriend in the world. And then I think it was you that said, this is the first time I made her happy was buying her an iPhone. And there seems to be this pattern of if you buy her stuff, it makes her happy. But if you don't buy her stuff, then it doesn't. And that's a concerning pattern. So I just want to point that out as a potential red flag to look for. And so that's all I'll say about that. One of the things that comes up in this episode is the fact that you're going to be leaving soon, and that's going to be really tough for both of you. Here you've got this limited time frame, this 90 days, and because of your work schedule where you work 4 weeks away and 4 weeks at home, you're going to be gone for 4 weeks and then coming back. And so Yara's going to be alone. And not only does this affect her in the short term, in this current period of 90 days, but as she looks ahead to having a life with you and having kids with you and having that kind of a career, she can see how that's going to be really tough. Now, you see the benefit in that. There is a benefit of that, of being able to, for 4 whole weeks, as you said, spend every day with your child or children. But at the same time, that kind of a work schedule is going to be rough for a family life, rough for both the wife and for the children. And that's something to consider. And so I want to point that out and say, hey, that is a valid concern of Yara's. And if I were talking to her like she was my client, I would say, yeah, that's something that you need to determine if, how important that is to you, if you can handle that, if Jovi's not willing to change that, is that something you want for your family life? So anyway, keep an eye out for that and be empathetic of that with Yara and consider, like, is there a possibility you could make a change with your work that would be better and more conducive to a long-term family life? After you get done talking about the work schedule, there's another element that comes up, and that is talking about what happened a year and a half ago in Albania when Yara had her miscarriage. And apparently you needed to leave to go to work, and because of the current situation, she was in another country without a passport. You ended up leaving her, and she makes this statement of, how can I trust you after this when I know you can leave me alone? And that is so hard. I know it's hard for you because, you were a little bit blindsided, and this came up a year and a half later, and you're kind of like, where did this come from? So it's hard in that moment to avoid being defensive and to have some empathy, but that's really the best thing you can do. Like, rather than feeling defensive about that, expressing empathy to her. And it sounds like if you could go back, that you would change things. And so you can communicate that to her and, gosh, I'm so sorry that I did that. And if I could go back, I would change it. And I know that must have been so hard. And really sit with her in that pain that she had in that moment. Now, one of the reasons that causes her pain is because the number one need of a woman is to feel safe and secure. And that safety and security comes on multiple levels, emotionally, financially, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this experience was an experience where she did not feel safe and secure. And so what she needs from you in this moment is to give her support, empathize with what she's going through, acknowledge the changes you need to make, and ask her what you can do to help her feel more safe and secure, build up trust in that way, and look for that in general, and ask yourself that question: how can I help Yara feel safe and secure, as I know that is the number one need of a woman in a relationship? So, Mike, last time I talked to you at the end of the episode about making sure you make time to do some fun things with Natalie. She really wanted to go to the waterfall. You took her out to see the waterfall this weekend. I think that's awesome. Great work. Natalie had a lot of fun there. She said it feels very good to have fun with Mike again. Now, there are some interesting comments she makes about, I slowly learn about Michael. It was vacation time. It was fun, Michael. In life, it was another Michael. And this is a challenge that many people meet in dating and relationships, and especially for long distance relationships, and especially for long distance relationships that are with someone out of the country. When you're dating in a long distance relationship, especially one out of the country, a lot of times most of your interactions together are on vacation. So you're having these great, amazing, magical times, and it feels like that's what the relationship is like, but you don't get to see each other in real life. And so it's really important to separate that out. Now, of course, you still need to do fun things and have those positives in the relationship. But if all of your relationship is based on vacation times, there's going to be problems once real life comes in. One of the things that comes out in this episode is there are some obvious trust issues here. Natalie is talking to her friend Svetlana, which was a great thing. She says, it's nice to tell my friend about my problems. It's good for her to be able to talk to someone. That helps with the loneliness and being alone. But these trust issues come out, and Svetlana asks Natalie, do you trust him? And she says, no, I don't. And the story comes out, but we don't hear much of the story, and maybe I've missed it somehow in an earlier season or something. But apparently before moving to the U.S., Mike and Natalie were on a break, and she says she caught him in some kind of a lie. Now, I don't know what that lie is, how serious the lie was, what kind of impacts it had, but obviously that caused a trust issue. Because I don't know what the lie was, what the impacts were, all those kinds of things, I can't make too many comments, but obviously this is something you guys are going to need to work through, is to rebuild that trust. And that comes out. Mike, you're able to see that even in the small things. When she's worried that the root beer has alcohol, you're saying, hey, root beer doesn't have alcohol. And she's not trusting you when you say that. And you say, she needs to trust me. So that's something that you can communicate with her about and kind of sit her down and say, Natalie, I can sense that you're not trusting me. Tell me about why you're not trusting me. Have her share her thoughts and feelings with you. Empathize with her about those things. And asking the question, what can I do to rebuild that trust? Another big thing that comes out in this episode is that you and Natalie are dealing with different value systems. There are things that are very important to her. Religion is very important to her. You're not religious. She doesn't drink much. You do more drinking. She eats fish, but not any meat besides fish. You like to eat meat, and that's something she's not happy about. Now, I like what you do here, actually, and how you handle it. For instance, with the eating meat thing, you say, yeah, I'll give it a shot, and we'll do this 1 week on, 1 week off thing, and we'll see how it goes. Later on in the episode, you are interviewed, and we see you say, no one is going to tell me what I can and can't eat. Like, I'll try it out, but no one's going to tell me. And I think that's actually a good way to handle it. You're willing to compromise. You're willing to look at other types of possibilities, but at the same time, what you eat, what you don't eat is about you, not her, and you are the one that gets to make that decision. And so that's good for you to be able to establish that. Now, one of the things you need to look out for is, she seems to want to change you. Now, it is important in a relationship that there is compromise, that you work together on solving problems, and you do a lot of meeting in the middle. But there needs to be a separation between you and her. And if you could draw a Venn diagram, there are some things that are your things and affect only you. There are some things that are her things and affect only her. And then there are some things that affect both of you. Now, with a lot of these things that she's concerned about, whether or not you're eating meat, whether or not you're having a drink with dinner or lunch, those things in and of themselves don't affect her. And if she's going to push that and not accept you and love you for you, that's a potential red flag. And so that's something I think you can communicate to her and say, hey, I do want to make some compromises and we can work through some things as a couple, but there are going to be some things that I'm going to choose to do, and you can accept me and love me for that or not, but that's kind of how it's going to be. And if she's not accepting you for who you are and trying to force her values on you, that's a potential problem, a potential red flag for the future of this relationship. Now, if these are things that are going to affect her directly, for instance, if your drinking were to be out of control, if you were to be an alcoholic, if that were causing problems in that way, then it very much does affect her, and she has more of a right to step in and say, hey, this doesn't work for me. It's still kind of up to her. She can't make your decisions. She can't control you, and it's still up to her to decide what she wants to do based on that and stay in or leave the relationship based on what you're doing, not doing. But from what I'm seeing right now, at least in these episodes, your drinking doesn't appear to be a problem. It just appears to be something that she doesn't like. Now, if Natalie were my client, I'd have her put together her top 10 list of what are you looking for in a spouse. And if some of these things are on her top 10 list and are very important to her, then I would have her evaluate what it is that she wants. I would say, if you're going to be in this relationship with Mike, you've got to love Mike for who he is. You can ask for some changes, but you can't necessarily expect those changes if they're things that just affect him. But if those are things that are important to you, this is the time now. If it is important for you to be in a relationship with someone who is religious, if it is important to you to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't eat meat and who doesn't drink, then this might not be the relationship for you. That being said, a key skill to develop in any relationship is to learn to love the person as they are. No matter who you end up in a relationship with, there are going to be things that aren't your favorite. There are going to be things that drive you crazy about them. You can request changes, you can ask for change, you can encourage change, but at the end of the day, the question is, can you love them the way they are? Now, you're in the stage right now where you're making that decision. Can I love Mike the way he is? And would this be a good marriage for me? That's a compatibility issue, and it's a judgment call, and there are lots of factors that go into that decision-making process. If he hits most of the things that you want, and especially if he hits if you have a top 10 list of the things that are most important to you, and especially the top 5 based on your values, if he's hitting those things, then while he may not be perfect, while he won't be perfect, and nobody will be perfect, he would be a compatible person for you. And so then the exercise becomes, how do I love him as he is? And that's a decision you'll need to make not just before you go into marriage, but a decision you'll need to be making continually in the marriage is, how do I learn to love him as he is? Tarek, the big issue that comes up with you and Hazel in this episode is where you're going to have your wedding. You would like to have it at the Cultural Center for Enlightenment, an important place to you, a place where you've found peace and happiness. Hazel would prefer to have it at a church. This is an area you're going to need to compromise on, and it's not going to be perfect for either of you. Really, Hazel, I'm sure, would love to have this wedding at a church in the Philippines with her family, but that's not going to be the case. It's not likely that she's going to feel comfortable having the wedding at the cultural center, so it's better to find a compromise place that, while not perfect for either of you, is something that both of you can be comfortable with. Now, one of the things that Hazel says is, I wish you wouldn't talk about this right away when I get here. She had basically just gotten off the plane. She's trying to adjust to everything in the country. And so if I were to go back in a time machine, I'd say, Tarek, give her some time, give her a week or two, let her get acclimated to where she is before talking about where you're getting married, before bringing up the cultural center and taking her on the tour. Not that that would necessarily have changed things for her, but it would have put her in a more comfortable place. When we talk to our spouses about things and want to negotiate about certain things, we do need to think about the timing of when we talk about them, what is their mood, where are they at, and look for the right time to do those things. Rebecca, there isn't a whole lot to say to you based on this episode You've got some concerns. You're setting up your apartment. You've got some concerns about Ziad moving into the apartment, knowing that you used to live in this building with your ex from Morocco. You're worried about how he might react to that. But at this point, we haven't seen how he reacts to that, so we can't say either way. That's just a fear of what might happen. The other thing we see in this episode, again, it's emphasized what kind of a sacrifice Ziad is making and what kind of a sacrifice all the fiancés are making to come from their country of origin, to leave their family, and to come to the United States. And you can really feel, again, the love that Ziad and his family have for each other and how hard it is for both Ziad and his family members in making this change and Ziad coming to the United States. So Rebecca, keep that in mind. Keep that sacrifice that Ziad is making in mind, and as he comes and is having to make a lot of changes, definitely allow that to have there be a lot of empathy for you in what he's going through and helping him through that hard time.
So those are some of my thoughts on this week's episode of 90 Day Fiancé. If you are struggling to find lasting love, set up some time with me and let's have a chat. I do video conference sessions with clients all over the world. Click the link down in the description to schedule some time with me. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and ring that notification bell.